So the storyteller came to the village and he told them the story, and then all the Pandavas were dreaming about Draupadi. And then the next morning, Kunti said, well, let's just go. And then there was this one bit which is super important, which I can't believe I forgot. Because it's about Guru, and how could I forget Guru? Especially since last week was Guru Purnima. Okay, so they're going and they're passing by a river. Arjuna is in the front leading the six of them. And this Yaksha Gandharva comes out and he says, at this time of the day, humans aren't allowed to go in the river, only Gandharvas are allowed to go in the river. So how dare you leave immediately or I'll kill you. And Arjuna is like, what nonsense are you talking? Since when are rivers only for Gandharvas at a particular time of the days? Rivers are for everyone at all times of the days. You cannot make such ridiculous statements and think you can get away with it. We here in the river now, and that's that. And so, of course, the Gandharva will fight with Arjuna. And of course, Arjuna knows how to fight. And so he could have killed the Gandharva, but he doesn't kill the Gandharva. He just injures the Gandharva to the point of unconscious. Should do it properly, no? So unconscious. Then the wife comes quickly and says, please, please don't kill him. And the wife's also very intelligent. She doesn't go to Arjuna, she goes straight to Yudhishthira. Because, you know, Yudhishthira is the one that's going to make the decision anyways. Arjuna is going to listen to Yudhishthira. So small things like this, we should emphasize how intelligent women are. Otherwise, they're not getting enough credit in the Mahabharata. So it turns out this Gandharva wanted to meet the Pandavas, and then he gives them advice. And like if you read this book or if you read Kamala Subramaniam, it's like 2 paragraphs. But if you read the original Mahabharata, something like 30, 40 pages, the advice that this Gandharva is giving them. So he starts with telling them stories about their ancestors. So he has known on both sides, all of Kunti's ancestors and all the Pandava ancestors. And so he starts telling them the stories of their ancestors and the mistake that the ancestors have made, which has a lot to do with unity. So remember this whole idea of Kunti wanting to make sure that the Pandavas stay united. So a lot of his stories are about when brothers disagree. And it's interesting that this is a theme in the Mahabharata because we see it so often. You know, with the Indians, we'll have family businesses and then the siblings don't agree. or it doesn't even have to be siblings, right? Any 2 people get into any kind of partnership and then this falling out that happens. I remember when I was researching heartache for the love letter book, you think boyfriend, girlfriend, and that's heartache. But even in this business, when you are partner with someone in a business, you build up such a bond with them. And then when there's that falling out, it's a heartache. It's like a proper breakup, even though there was no romance in it. And of course, we can understand that because when 2 siblings have a disagreement to the extent where you no longer talk, it's like a part of you is injured and taken away from you, because every relationship that we have becomes a part of who we are. So all these stories about not letting something divide a relationship to the point that it's broken. And the Pandavas listen very attentively, understanding, especially Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira was very acutely aware of messages being given by well-wishers. And he was also very acutely aware of when the person is not a well-wisher. And so he would listen as attentively when the person's not a well-wisher, so he would know exactly what they're up to. And he would listen very attentively when they are a well-wisher, because he would accept it as a blessing. Yudhishthira was always that very humble sense of person that, yes, teach me, yes, guide me. even though he knew everything already. Like he's the most learned. When Kunti wants to know something, she goes and asks him. When Vidur wants to know something, they go and ask Yudhish. But when Yudhishthira is sitting in front of someone else, he's like, you teach me. And this is one of the most incredibly beautiful things about our culture. That no matter, doesn't matter how much you know, you can always learn. And when a person has that in their heart, then that, and it's so beautiful to see it when somebody has that in their heart. And so within our mission, we've seen Puja Gurudev had encouraged Guruji Swami Tejamayinandaji to teach the Ramayana for the first. Gurudev only taught Upanishad and Gita, Prakarna Granthas, Tattva Bodh, Atma Bodh, Vedant, proper. And then Guruji was in Siddhabari Ashram, and in that region of India, and Vedant was a little bit like kind of too high flying, or maybe not as popular, not as well known. And Guruji grew up in the area of India where Ramayana is very, very popular. So Guruji was encouraged by Gurudev to teach Ramayana. Guruji also very fluent in Hindi, sings, it works, right? He has the package for it to work. Gurudev listened to Guruji's classes. He sat as a student in Guruji's classes. Like, this is my student. Why should I have to listen? Gurudev said, it's Ramayana. And then, once once when Gurudev had a heart attack and he was in Uttarkashi, and somebody was doing seva for him, and that person was a South Indian and they didn't know Hindi. And so Gurudev was listening to Guruji's tapes, which were in Hindi. And then he'd look at this Amma and he'd say, why you don't understand how beautiful he is talking? She would narrate the story to Guruji of how Gurudev would praise him. But this is not, of course, I'm going to know the story because it's my Guru's. And of course, I'm going to say it because it's my Guru's. But we see it in the scriptures where Shivji, means Lord Shiva, was the first person to teach the Ramayana. And then he teaches it to Agastya. And then Agastya is doing a yagna somewhere. And Shivji goes and listens. And Parvati is like, why are we listening to Agastya? And Shivji is like, because he's speaking so beautifully. And so Yudhishthira had this absolute, but I don't even want to call it humility, because it's a genuine wanting to learn and a genuine love for knowledge and a genuine gratitude that this person's guiding me. And so this Gandharva is telling them, and then he says, and the 5 of you are incomplete. And what do y'all need to complete yourselves? So now let's do pop quiz. What do they need to complete themselves? Actually, I gave you all such a big clue. Nobody's going to say? Come on. Yeah. But they guess wife. Because they're on their way to meet Draupadi. And it's not wife. I ruined it. I told you all the answer first only. This is such a powerful message. You incomplete. Why? And he explains that Arjuna was able to defeat the Gandharva because Arjuna had been practicing celibacy, brahmacharya. And so his strength was enough, because Gandharvas are like ×3 more powerful than humans. Of course, Arjuna is no normal human. He's half Devata, but still, Gandharvas are way stronger. And so they know, usually a human doesn't stand a chance to defeat a Gandharva. But Arjuna easily won. Like, it didn't even take him long, like 2 minutes, won. And how was Arjuna so strong? That it was his power of brahmacharya. And we see this a lot in the scriptures. There's an energy within us which is called ojas. Yeah. And so we have energy, which, we move our hands, we look, we talk, all of that we are using, lots of energies. And so energy moves in different ways, right? So circulation of the body, it's just moving always around. And most of our energy flows from inside to outside. So when I look, my energy is flowing through my eyes outside. When I'm talking, my energy is flowing outside through my mouth. I listen to something very interesting, and then my energy goes into, like when they were listening to the story about Draupadi, so much energy, they were listening so attentively, they were listening, even all the muscles on their face became more animated. So much energy is being used, and most of our energy goes from in to the world outside. But with this energy, and it's usually linked into with the Kundalini, and I'm not going to go into it too much, and it sits at the base of the sign. So this is not true. Well, it's not true that it sits on the base of your spine, but this is how it's described. So it's more metaphorical. It's more to help us to understand. But what is true is Ojas moves upwards. Where is it sitting? It could be sitting anywhere, but Ojas will always move upwards. Whereas other energy moves everywhere, right? Circulation moves everywhere. Excretion is going to move downwards. Otherwise, it's moving out into the world. So very little of our energy is moving upwards. And that's why they metaphorically say it sits on the base of our spine, and then it circles up the spine like a snake to come to the top of our head here, which is our Brahmananda chakra. And then only when it reaches here, ting, you get moksha. That's the description given in Yoga Shastras. And why did I say it so humorously? Because Vedanta doesn't believe that. Yeah. Yoga Shastra gives a lot of attention to that, and I don't mean to ridicule them in any which way or form, but the idea is it's not a physical thing, and it can't be measured. But when we are able to harness Ojas, and the way to harness Ojas is to have self-discipline of all types, but primarily sexual desires, means controlled. Not that you don't indulge, you have them and don't indulge them, then that's not controlling. You're able to not have, like not appropriate, not needed, done, which please note Arjuna could do. Someone who is super popular, who ends up having 14 wives, has Ojas. Arjuna was incredibly self-controlled. When it was no, it was no. It did not feature in his thinking. He had to be worthy of being taught the Gita, right? And so he did. He had this quality. So the Gandharva says, you're going to get married, because everybody knows now they're on their way to the Swayamvar. This will fall. Till now, Arjuna's lived a life of celibacy. This will change. Arjuna only is going to win the Swayamvar. So you have to have somebody who is still following that life with y'all to lend y'all that energy. So y'all can benefit from it. Now, them as Kshatriyas, as rulers, needed, in order to win, need that energy. We not Kshatriyas, we not rulers. But what do we understand from this? One, self-control gives us strength. Very super duper important. Not just sexual desire self-control. Any kind of self-control gives us strength. It increases Ojas within us. Means it's an upward movement of energy going towards our head, but it's upward movement more in terms of helping, not a physical upward movement, right? Because there's no part of our body that's unsacred or undivine. It's more a moving to higher thinking, virtues, values, altars that are selfless. That's what upward movement means. It's not a physical upward movement. We can't get so stuck on that. Yeah. Second is, when we don't have it, have someone in your life who has it. when it's a desirable thing to have. So let's say I don't have that much self-control. Make sure I have someone in my life who has it, who can be a constant reminder and inspiration to me to make sure I try harder at having it. I'm not good at forgiving. I hold a grudge for every small thing. Even if you sat on my spot, I won't talk to you for a year. Even if I'm that kind of a person, then in my life, make sure I have someone who is forgiving. I'm not really that kind of person. Huh? I was giving example. Have someone in your life who is forgiving. Why? Because what we don't have, when we make sure the person in our life has it, we constantly remind it. Be more like them. Mhm. Now, this person, ideally, if you have one package who has all the qualities, amazing, guru. Not everyone's so blessed. Everyone can be, but maybe not everyone's so open-minded or so willing. So then, okay, never mind. Some inspirational person in your life that you hold on to that has these qualities. Some family member, somebody in society, somebody you admire. And if it's not a real person, then we are so blessed to have saints and sages that have walked this earth for so many years. You can hold on to Ramana Maharishi, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Arvindo, Ravindranath Tagore, Guru Nanak Sahib, so many different saints that have come and gone that are highly inspiring. Not even just within our culture, right? There's like Martin Luther King, there's Tolstoy, there's Rumi, so many great masters. Their life becomes our inspiration. But we have to keep them in our life. They have to become a significant part of our life. So firstly, the more control we have, the more powerful we have. Secondly, when we don't have something, make sure we surround ourselves with people who have that thing. Is this beautiful message that this Gandharva is giving them. So the Pandavas say, yes, you're right, we don't. We don't have a guru. And every family would have a guru in those days. And then lineage would have a guru, the Kula would have a guru, the area would have a guru. But the Pandavas are now this unique entity because they're part of the Kuru dynasty, but they've been kind of cited. They know they're going to have constantly be battling the Kauravas, so they can't rely as much on the Kuru dynasty resources, right? Because Bhishma himself would have been the perfect person. So the Gandharva guides them to Dumya. Am I saying his name right? Dumya. And so they go to his ashram, asking him to be their guru. And he likes them at first sight. Here you don't see that they like him at first sight. Usually when student meets guru, you hear from the student how it's love at first sight and that the guru is so amazing. In Mahabharata, when the Pandavas meet Dyumya, you hear about how Dyumya likes them at first sight and thinks, yeah, I'll be your guru. And but also how beautifully Yudhishthira approaches him, and the others follow. And then from this point on, he never leaves them. No matter what happens from this point on, he is with them. So he goes into exile with them. He's gone into everything that goes on from now onwards till the war ends. Even after that, he's with them. Only when the 5 of them leave for that, to climb the mountain, he doesn't go with them, which is when they are ascending to the heavens. But otherwise, he's with them this entire time. And so without this, we are incomplete. Without having a role model to help us improve ourselves, we are incomplete. And the better the role model, of course, the more likely we are to achieve all those things that we want to be able to achieve, our personality types. So then they proceed. Oh, one more important thing. Why are you laughing? Mahabharata is so complex. I keep forgetting small things. Vedavyasa comes to them before they meet the Gandharva, before they leave the house, the Brahmana's house. I know, rewind forward. I told you we're not going chronologically. And Vedavyasa turns up very often. Remember, Vedavyasa is their grandfather. Yes, their grandfather. And Kunti's thinking, no, now they're all dreaming about Draupadi, now what to do. And that's when Vedavyasa comes, and Vedavyasa tells all of them, yes, go to the Swayamvar. So that should we, shouldn't we, was already kind of, Vedavyasa said, go. And then Vedavyasa also said, she'll be your wife. No, wife is singular, but yours was plural. And they were thinking, huh? The story said she's going to be Arjuna's wife. So two things we've already noticed. Kunti sees that all of them are dreaming of Draupadi and doesn't like any women coming in between them. Gandharva told them lots of stories about women coming in between men and don't let anything come in between you all. And then we see that Vedavyasa has also mentioned kind of, she's going to be your wife. Wife, yours. All of yours. They didn't quite catch it though, because when you're in that romantic mood and you're not really paying attention. Anyway, they go to Drupada's kingdom. They dressed as Brahmanas. The other Brahmanas see them and say, gosh, you really need a new set of clothes, which I thought was hilarious that's mentioned in the Mahabharata, that their clothes were really worn out. And the other poor Brahmanas were looking at them like, how poor are you? They're just the princes of Hastinapur. But this is the life does this to you. You think you're going to be a prince and you're always going to be cladded in, whatever, Gucci's and Chanel. And then the poor guy is looking down at you thinking you look bad, man. You just never know where you're going to end up in life. Like, it doesn't matter where you're born. You just never know what you're going to have to go through. And we see this both in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Ramchandraji too had to sleep on the ground, dressed in bark, and had to live a life of simplicity and austerity. And he had a ball for 13 years. 14th year wasn't so fun, but for 13 years, they were good. Then you see this here too. You see in the Mahabharata, they born princes destined to be kings. So noble, so virtuous, so loved by people. So good looking. Because, how can you not mention that? It's mentioned every second paragraph. But they had to sleep on the floor, eat roots and berries. And they didn't have clothes, bichara. It was all torn and tattered, that poor people were donating them clothes. But they get to the Swayamvar. Ta-na-na-na! They get to the Swayamvar. So they sitting in the Swayamvar. All the kings are sitting in one area, kings and princes, and the Brahmanas are sitting in another area, and then general public is sitting in another area. And Drishtadyumna gets up to welcome everyone and then announce his sister, her glories, and invites Draupadi into the Swayamvar. She walks in holding her garland and the description of what she's wearing and how her hair is done and how the eyeliner is framing her eyes and how she looks absolutely stunning. Now, if the description wasn't enough to convince you that she looked absolutely stunning, when Arjuna sees her, he stands up without realizing he's standing up. And all the other four brothers, like almost half a second later, follow suit. And they all stand up to look at her. The minute this happens, Krishna notices these five men standing up to look at Draupadi. Why wasn't he looking at Draupadi? Because he's Krishna. And Krishna looks at Balram and says, those five are the Pandavas. What do you think? I'm looking at the shape of their bodies, their posture, and their stance. I'm pretty sure those are our cousins, the Pandavas. Then you see Balram looking at them. How do they know? Because they're the only five standing. All the other Brahmanas are sitting because the Brahmanas don't gawk at people. They do. Well behaved. Kshatriyas that will look with so much interest. So these five Kshatriyas who are pretending to be Brahmanas are looking at Draupadi. So Balram gets a good look at them and Balram says, yes, they are definitely the Pandavas. So Krishna smiles. And at that point, Krishna, through ishara, indication, gesture, tells all the Yadavas they will not participate in the Swayamvar because very few people would have been able to accomplish this task. The task of the fish is rotating on a wheel. They have to look at the pond, looking at the water in the bowl. They have to shoot the eye of the fish. The Yadavas would have been able to do this. Not just Krishna, Balram, few of the others also. They're very skilled, right? They all amshas of Krishna. So they would have been able to do this. So when Krishna says, none of you all are going to participate, all of them complete, absolute, okay with that. Like not one of them were like, why? We want to? No. Krishna said it's like it was, they so not even obliging. It's kind of like, yeah. Like, here in Hong Kong, when the government makes the law wear the mask, everyone follows, but you're following because you have to. It's not like that. Krishna says, and they follow not because they have to, because Krishna said. So now you want to. And this was the Yadavas, and this was the Pandavas with Yudhishthira. The minute Yudhishthira said something, Arjuna wanted to follow. Bhim wanted to. Nakula Sahadev, no brainer, you follow. When Krishna said something, Yadavas just did. It was now the way it had to be because Krishna said it, which I love. Because Krishna said it, now it's the way it has to be. It can be no other way. So they're watching the Swayamvar. So I mentioned quite a bit of the Swayamvar last week, so I don't have to mention too much more. The people that were honored the most in the Swayamvar is the Hastinapur, so Duryodhana, and Krishna. But Krishna is not participating in the Swayamvar. So Duryodhana gets up and he goes. Like, he should know better. He's not that good. You're going to embarrass yourself, which he did. Because he can't shoot the eye of the fish while the, and so then now this is the thing about Duryodhana. Who went and tried to shoot the eye when you know you can't? Duryodhana only. Now who's super angry? Duryodhana. And now he'll be mean to everybody else. Why? Because now he's angry because he's been embarrassed. But who embarrassed him? Like, don't go shoot if you don't know how to shoot. But no, Duryodhana went to go shoot. And you see this with Duryodhana again and again. He doesn't have the capacity to, but he really wants to. So he does, and then he falls short, and then he feels more insecure. Like, do what you're good at. Don't try to be what you're not. But Duryodhana didn't quite get that. And so often when we look at our youth today, that's what they're doing. Trying to do what you know you can't do. Like, I'm not saying don't try to be better, but they feel now they already can, and they should be able to do this because they are king of Hastinapur. Well, he's the prince, but he already thought of himself as the king. Duryodhana, I'm talking about Duryodhana. And so then now he should be able to and then he falls short. But it's very important. We have a very realistic way of seeing ourselves. We need to be able to know what we can do, what we can't do, and we also need to be able to know what we want. Duryodhana was married. Yeah. And actually, the only reason he wanted Draupadi was status. Draupadi was high status. Two reasons. One, Drupada was a very powerful king. So winning Draupadi's hand means you now have a very powerful in-law on your side. Two, stunningly beautiful. So that trophy wife concept. So sad that it existed even in Mahabharata time. Although trophy husband also existed in Mahabharata time, because Bhim was Hidambi's trophy husband. Understanding what we want, understanding who we are, trying constantly to be better than what we are, but not overestimating our actual capacity. And then if we do put ourselves out there, not to be embarrassed by it, right? If I really want to be better and I want to go and try, and then I don't quite get it, I may be embarrassed, but I don't have to make everybody else's life miserable because I got embarrassed, which is what Duryodhana does. When he gets embarrassed because he couldn't quite do what he wanted to do because he thought he should do it, but actually he didn't need to do it because no other prince there could do it either. He made everybody else's life miserable. He'd throw these tantrums. Again, you see it in our youth today. They don't get what they want, and then, what a tantrum. Duryodhanas. We have a lot of Duryodhanas in today's world. Okay, coming back, Swayamvar. So now Duryodhana goes, he gets embarrassed. Karna is walking up. Kunti says, Draupadi says, no. And she has every right. It's her Swayamvar. She didn't want to marry Karna, so she said no. Then lots of princes came. None of them were able to shoot the eye of the fish. And then, interesting while you're reading the section that it's in Drupada's voice. Drupada is Draupadi's father. And he's like, what a useless bunch of princes have come. Because none of them can shoot the food. Like, is there nobody on this earth worthy of my daughter? And they literally Sita's father, Janak Maharaj taught the same thing when Sitaji's wedding was going on. See, Janak Maharaj went one step further and Janak Maharaj thought, will my daughter remain unmarried her whole life because there's just nobody worthy of her? And then Ramchandraji came down. So this Drupada is thinking the same thing. Okay, so when your daughter is also so amazing, poor father has heartache. How to find a suitable person. So now no prince was able to accomplish the task. So Arjuna stood up. All the other Brahmanas look at him. 80% of the Brahmanas look at him and say, sit back down. The princes can't do it. You think you're going to be able to do it? You'll just embarrass Brahmanas for all of time. Sit back down. Then few Brahmanas were like looking at him saying, he doesn't look like a normal Brahmana. Look how wide his shoulders is. Maybe he'll make us look good. Maybe we should let him go. So there was this whole debate amongst the Brahmanas whether he should go or not, because he can't go without their blessing. Tradition. You listen to elders. Right? He can't just get up and go. He had to get, in his mind, he had to get only Yudhishthira's blessing. But Yudhishthira knows the rules. So Yudhishthira won't allow him to go until he gets the blessing of all the elder Brahmanas there. Plus, they have invited them to the Swayamvar. So they the guest. And when you're the guest, you don't just go and do what you want to do. You do only with their blessings. So Arjuna was waiting there for all these Brahmanas to decide whether he's fit enough to go or not. Finally, they say, okay, go. How bad can it be? Anyways, none of the princes have won, and then they can't insult us as Brahmanas for not waiting when the princes themselves haven't won. So based on this argument, Arjuna walks up to the dais. As Arjuna's walking up, Drupada suddenly sits up straighter and thinks, who is this? Krishna's smile became from 3 inches to 6 inches. Yudhishthira, Bhim, Nakula, Sahadev are leaning forward, waiting. What is going to happen? Drishta is also thinking, who's this and where he came from? And then Arjuna bows to Drupada. This is where you see how well Kunti has brought them up, and asks permission from Drupada, not Draupadi, to participate in the Swayamvar. Draupadi's watching very attentively. It's her father's love. Drupada looks at Draupadi's face. The look on Draupadi's face is she approves. So he gives permission. This bit's important. Right now, Draupadi doesn't know who he is. When she looks at him, she's willing to marry him. Because if he wins, that means she marries him. Without knowing who he is, just by seeing him, Draupadi already approves. But you're seeing this through her father looking at her face. He'd know. So Drupada agrees. The whole assembly is shocked. A Brahmana is going to participate? Then most of them are thinking, no way. Where princes have failed, no way. Yet, they scared. Could he win? So there's pin drop silence because Arjuna gets into pose. What pose? He has to stand. He has to balance himself. He has to balance the bow and arrow, and he has to look down and he has to shoot up. So he gets into his pose. And with his body and with his training and with his discipline, that pose is something to behold. And so everyone is like, uh-oh. Why? Because all the princes have failed, and so they're already embarrassed. Draupadi is even more intrigued. Now, 100% attention of absolutely every single person at the Swayamvar is on Arjuna. Arjuna takes his time. He wasn't deliberately taking time for artistic effect. The wheel is rotating. He has to calculate the speed of the movement of the wheel to assess. And how's he doing that? By looking at the reflection. So he has to be able to see at what count the fish is going to appear in line with his arrow. He's not being dramatic, he's concentrating. And so he's staying very still, focusing until he shoots. When he shoots, Arjuna's skill is such that the tang of the way the bow leaves, the arrow leaves the bow is very distinct. Anyone who knows Arjuna really well would have known in that moment, that's Arjuna. Drona and Bhishma would have recognized Arjuna. Duryodhana never paid attention. So he did not recognize. Karna noticed, didn't recognize, but noticed, because the arrow went through the eye of the fish and came out on the other side. Right? And the precision with which it was done was in the center. And so there was this reaction from the crowd. The crowd was now suddenly very agitated because somebody has won Draupadi, and it's this random Brahmana that they don't know. And Drupada immediately looks at Drishtadyumna and says, call the army. How acutely aware is Drupada? Then he looks at Draupadi and says, quickly garland him. And Draupadi quickly, willingly, happily, the word used is joyful, garlands him. Arjuna takes her and goes straight to Yudhishthira. This is also, this Arjuna, he does everything right. Not that, yay, I got a wife. No, takes her straight to Yudhishthira. Then Duryodhana, it had to be Duryodhana only. Nobody else. Duryodhana says, Draupadi has insulted us. Drupada has insulted us. They called us here for the Swayamvar just so that she can marry a Brahmana and insult all the kings. What nonsense is this? And he charges at Drupada. Yudhishthira immediately looks at Arjuna. That's your father-in-law, go protect him. Then immediately looks at Bhim, go help. So Arjuna and Bhim are standing in front of Drupada like bodyguards. Duryodhana and every other prince attacks. This bit I think I told you last week. So Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira, Nakula, Sahadev take Draupadi out where she is safe and away. And so they don't see the fight. Yeah, because they looking after Draupadi outside of the Swayamvar. Arjuna fights amazingly. Bhim fights amazingly. Arjuna is fighting Karna specifically, and Karna says, I'm happy to meet an opponent like you, because in this world, other than Arjuna, there is nobody fit enough to be my opponent. Little did he know he was praising Arjuna to Arjuna. Actually, Arjuna would have loved that. He could have totally lapped it up, but he doesn't. He doesn't say anything to Karna. He just says, I have to protect Drupada. It's Karna that says, backs away from the fight. Seeing this person's skill, Karna backs away from the fight. If it was a battle of life and death, Karna wouldn't have backed away, but it's for Draupadi, who is anyway didn't want to marry him. So also he could tell that this fight wasn't going to end. And this occasion didn't warrant it. And so once you challenge, it would be to the death. And so here you see Karna is quite sensible. Actually, Karna is sensible for a while. I don't know at what point he loses it. But in the beginning here, you see Karna is very, very sensible, even about respecting another person, even about understanding what's needed in a situation and what's not needed in a situation. In this situation, don't fight to the death. She's already chosen her husband. You know, what difference does it make to fight him to the death? And she just chose him and then you kill him, and that makes no sense. So Karna is very sensible. Then Krishna comes. So Karna backs away. Bhim is able to defeat the people that attack him. And Krishna comes and says, but why are you all fighting? He won her. That was the rules of the Swayamvar. And so nobody would go against what Krishna says. No kingdom. Krishna said, then that's how it has to be. Not only for the Yadus, but even for all the other kingdoms. Like nobody messed with Krishna. Why? His army was the strongest of all armies. You had the Narayana Sena. You had the biggest army. So nobody messed with Krishna. Krishna follows the Pandavas. So Arjuna, oh, this is so cute. Arjuna and Bhim go back, like to find Yudhishthira and Draupadi and all of that. And like Yudhishthira is like standing there so worried and gives them both a hug, y'all okay? It's like the bond between the brothers is really, really cute. And, Bhim and Arjuna are like, yeah, we're fine. Let's go. For them, it was nothing. In fact, they loved it because they hadn't fought for so long. For them, it was some action. So they go home. And then this bit is also very interesting. Arjuna enters the house first with Draupadi and says, Mom, look what alms we brought today. The word alms is they've been begging. It's food. So he was trying to be cute, whatever. It really didn't work. Can't call a wife alms. And this is also very interesting. And I never say this with the Bal Vihar kids because I always make this point very seriously with the Bal Vihar kids. But I always think this. Before Arjuna walks in, it's written in the Mahabharata, Kunti is anxiously waiting to see what happened because they have gone to the Swayamvar. She knew they went Swayamvar. She knew Arjuna was participating in Swayamvar. Arjuna walks into the house and the first thing she says is, share it amongst the 5 of you. Like, hello, they went Swayamvar. But Arjuna said, look what alms I have won today. He didn't even say brought back. He said, I have won today. So Arjuna's fault, he said it wrong. Draupadi's, Kunti's fault, she didn't look to see what it was. Maybe she was so stressed about Swayamvar and she heard alms, whatever. Anyways. And then she looks up and she sees Draupadi. And the first thing she does is take Draupadi's hand and goes to Yudhishthira and says, what came out of my mouth was share it equally amongst the 5 of y'all. And actually, that's not usually how they shared their alms. Remember how they shared their alms? Usually what would be done is it was given half to Bhim, and the others had 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. But that's not what came out of her mouth. What came out of her mouth was share it equally between the 5 of you. Now, this bit is why I said I do it very seriously with the Bal Vihar kids, because we don't understand the importance of keeping our word. Kunti was born in an era where they did tapas. Like Gandharvari blinded herself, and the tapas that Gandharvi achieved by doing that was that she could actually see the future. She could actually see people's intentions. She could actually see. And so when Gandharvi meets Draupadi, Gandharvi knows because of Draupadi, all my kids are going to die. But she still warmly hugs Draupadi and welcomes her into the family. This is amazing about Gandharvi. She says, because what's wrong? My kids are like that only. They do all the wrong things. They will get this kind of a consequence. All that she's thinking, when she meets Draupadi. She meets Draupadi, she knows straight away Draupadi is going to be the cause of her son's death. Immediate second thought is, but my sons act badly, and so this is the consequence that they are going to get. They deserve it. Like for a mother to be able to think that about her own kids is amazing. And then to still hug Draupadi. So Kunti also has done an incredible amount of tapas. Her whole life, she has done a lot of tapas. Now, the thing about tapas is very, very, very interesting. One thing can burn away years of tapas. Like on the spiritual journey, nothing is wasted. Yeah. So whatever lessons we learn, we learn. So like virtues we learn, stay with us. Knowledge we learn stays with us. But tapas doesn't stay with us. What's this tapas? Remember the ojas energy I was talking about that goes upwards? This energy, which makes the mind super powerful, that makes us able to have siddhis, can be washed away like this, gone. 10 years of tapas can be gone in one thought. 20 years of tapas, 30 years. Vishwamitra did 100 years of meditation and it was gone in 5 minutes of screaming and shouting. So does it mean he didn't spiritually grow? Of course, he spiritually grew from doing 100 years of meditation, but tapas is not there. I mean, the tej, the siddhi, the power of being able to harness the mind in the same way. And that's why interesting what kind of tapas you do also, because the kind of tapasas that can be broken so quickly, then so much more guarded you have to be doing when you do those kinds of tapas. So Kunti's tapas was, she did many, but if she says something and now it doesn't come through, her tapas of speech that she has done is lost. It means she has spoken not a lie, but a incorrect statement. So if you don't break the tapas, then you gain the shakti that whatever you say comes true. But if her tapas breaks, it's all lost. Her words will lose power. And so Kunti was devastated. And her question to Yudhishthira was, how do I not commit sin by making what I said a false? And at the same time, how do I protect my daughter-in-law and make sure she doesn't have a life of difficulty or do anything sinful? The words used as sin. Not often they use the word sin. Usually it's just dharma, but here specifically it's sin. And Yudhishthira looks at Arjuna and says to Arjuna, it was you who won Draupadi's hand in the Swayamvar, and so this decision is yours to make. Arjuna looks at Yudhishthira and says, whatever I win is never mine. It's always yours. After losing our father, you are our father and our guide. This decision and Draupadi is yours. Arjuna was already in love with Draupadi. But he gave her, not that she's a thing to be given, but in this bit of the story, it's really like she's a thing, to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira was acutely aware of dharma and also acutely aware of his own mind. And he realized he had desire. Now, where Duryodhana had no awareness of himself, Yudhishthira had full awareness of himself. He knew he had desire. And he was completely honest with himself and everyone there. So he said, then we shall follow mother's word, and she'll be all 5 of our wives. He didn't keep her for himself, because Kunti's words were, share her amongst the 5 of you equally. At this point, all the brothers immediately agreed. Because if Yudhishthira said, no, not because they all wanted Draupadi. Yes, they all wanted Draupadi also, but they all had enough self-control. Because like when Krishna said, that's the way it has to be. For the Pandavas, when Yudhishthira said, that's the way it has to be. So when Yudhishthira recognized that he had desire in his heart, he also recognized all of them had desire in their heart. What's really interesting here is Draupadi agrees with a smile on her face. In some versions, it is written she doesn't agree. But here, she agrees with a smile on her face. Just then, Krishna knocks on the door. Krishna had secretly followed them. In some versions, it says Draupadi thinks, oh, how can I marry 5 of you? People will talk badly about me. It is a sin. And it's Krishna that convinces Draupadi. But no, Krishna didn't have to convince Draupadi. She happily agrees. Krishna comes and you were right. This is their first meeting. Krishna introduces himself to Kunti. He's Bua, right? And introduces Balram. And they were about to introduce themselves when he's like, I know. But actually, there's an incident in the Bhagavatam, not in the Mahabharata. And there's some differences between the Bhagavatam and the Mahabharata. And I'm not so quite sure about the timeline. But in the Bhagavatam, when Krishna leaves Vrindavan, then most people think he's never met the gopis again after that. But there is this one yagna that they have in Kurukshetra, which is the Kurukshetra, where the gopis come and Krishna is there and everyone's there. And Arjuna is also there and Kunti is also there. Don't know where that fits in the timeline, but I had always thought that's where they first met. But that could be a difference between Bhagavatam and Mahabharata. Anyway, here it's very clear that they're meeting for the first time. But before the Kunti meets him, when we see that Kunti is anxiously waiting for the sons to come back from the Swayamvar, she's thinking of Krishna the entire time. So while Krishna is watching the Swayamvar, we have Kunti here thinking of her sons, but more thinking about Krishna. And she's actually praying during that time. Krishna, please let my sons be guided in the right direction. And so the meeting is actually incredibly sweet because you see Kunti praying to Krishna, and then Krishna appears in front of her because he's followed the Pandavas and introduces himself. I am your nephew, Krishna, and this is Balram. And then there's this, it's just it's like Krishna has come into their house and like it's all very sweet and it's a little bit more formal, but the feeling of it is like, I love you so much. I've been waiting to meet you so much, and like hugs them all and things like, now we're going to be best of friends. Okay, I got to go by. Because he doesn't want to blow their cover. They're still in hiding. Nobody really knows what they are. For Krishna to be visiting them, everybody will get very, very suspicious. Why would Krishna visit some random Brahmana? So he also hides himself and follows them, goes to their house, visits them, and then he has to go right. But it's this very joyful kind of like, I'm here. Krishna enters their house and it's like, I am in your life now. It's almost like they, of course, they want it. They're excited to meet Krishna. They're very happy to meet, but it's really the joy is more from Krishna's side. It's these Pandavas are so lucky. Their guru is happy to meet them. Krishna is happy to meet them. Like something they did right, man. And Drishtadyumna, Draupadi's brother, had also followed, and he was watching through the cracks of the door that Kunti is teaching Draupadi how to cook and what to cook and how to divide the food and give half to Bhim. And so here too we see that Draupadi is being taught, give half the food to Bhim, we'll all eat the other half. But what came out of her mouth was, So a little bit fast forward, Draupadi is very happy, right? This whole time, the only description given is she's smiling. Even when Krishna Jumna comes to see is Draupadi okay, she's smiling. When Krishna comes to see if she's okay, she's smiling. So she's good. Then Draupadi, of course, wants to know who's married his daughter. So they get invited to the palace. Yudhishthira says, we are the Pandavas. Draupadi is extremely happy that it's the Pandavas that have, and so he said, let's arrange the wedding for Arjuna and Draupadi. And Yudhishthira says, but I'll marry her first. And he's like, what? Okay, yeah, any one of you can marry her as long as one of the Pandavas. And he said, no, we'll all marry her. At that point, Drupada has a meltdown. How can my father, how can my daughter marry 5 husbands? And Yudhishthira cites many rules of dharma and incidences, which makes it okay. But at that point, again, Veda Vyasa comes. Vyasa comes and he explains to Drupada that Draupadi in her previous life had done tapas for years and years and years and years and years to Lord Shiva. And when Lord Shiva appeared in front of her and said, ask me whatever it is you want, she said, I want a husband that is noble and dharmic, that was virtue in embodiment of all virtues. I want a husband that is the strongest in the whole world, whose strength cannot be defeated by anyone. I want a husband who is famous and well known and well reputed and wanted by every woman in the country. I want a husband that is so good looking, Nakula. I want a husband. Poor guy, that's all the credit he gets. I want a husband that's extremely intelligent. Now, she said 5 sentences. She didn't say, I want a husband and. No, she said 5 times, 5 sentences. And Lord Shiva, when she finished, said, Tatastu. Tatastu means, may it be so. Now, if Lord Shiva says Tatastu, it has to happen. And then she realizes, and she says, you're going to give me a husband with all these qualities? And Lord Shiva says, no such man exists, which I love. I love. I love that Lord Shiva says this. If Lord Shiva says it, it must be true. You asked for 5 things, you will get 5 husbands. And then she said, no, I wanted one man with all these qualities. And Lord Shiva says, the tapas you have done, you will be able to get the boon you want in the way that it can be fulfilled. The only person that has all qualities in one is the Lord, but you didn't ask for the Lord. If you wanted all those things in one person, it's only the Lord. And then he also showed Drupada, who Veda Vyasa showed Drupada, that each one of the Pandavas had been Indra in a lifetime. Now, to get the position of Indra in the heavens, you have to have done a lot of punya. And so in one lifetime, in one kalpa, Yudhishthira was Indra, in another kalpa, Bhim was Indra, in another kalpa, Arjuna. So they have all lived as Indra, which means their souls are very, very, very exalted. And so Veda Vyasa tells Drupada they are all worthy of Draupadi and they will look after her beautifully. And Drupada is worried that, like just husband and wife fight so much. 5 husbands and 1 wife, how much fighting there'll be. And it's Veda Vyasa that assures him that they will look after her incredibly beautifully. And so Drupada agrees. And so when the wedding is being held, weddings is being held, it becomes known to the public that these are the Pandavas. And Draupadi has been won by Arjuna. So now everybody knows that they're not dead, that they're very much alive. And Duryodhana finds out this at the wedding. And oh my God, he's angry. He's so angry, he starts crying. And what does he say? It's so unfair. What's unfair? That they didn't die. Look at our thinking, huh? He's genuinely thinking this. He really believes this. He believes it's so unfair that they didn't die. Why didn't they die? I tried to kill them. Why didn't they die? And now they've won Draupadi. And they have Drupada as a father-in-law. And to make it worse, Krishna was at the wedding cheering the Pandavas, like, they my family, I'm going to stand by them. Krishna made it very loud and clear. I stand by the Pandavas. Anybody messes with the Pandavas messes with me. Krishna has already made this statement here on the day of Yudhishthira's wedding. Yudhishthira married one day, being married the next day. And there was this whole thing about her becoming a virgin again, but I don't quite completely understand that. Even that Satyavati, but I'll think about it more and we'll talk about it at some other point when I understand it more. Not sure exactly what they mean by it. Sometimes things get lost in translation. So now they married and they live happily ever after. Not. Hastinapur doesn't come for the wedding. There's not enough time. Announced in morning, married in afternoon. Those days they did things fast. No need to waste time. No need to go to Bali, Phuket, look at hotels, plan, save the date 1 year in advance. Waste of time, all of that. Any questions? Was there enough story today? I didn't do hardly philosophy today, so much story I did. Joy, I am loving the talks. Could please let me know which Mahabharata book Swaminiji is using for the talks. I actually have read the original Mahabharata's translation, but the other one that I referred to is, can you all see it? It's the one by ISKCON. This is ISKCON's version. I've also read Kamala Subramaniam's version. And then, but I think a lot of the knowledge, the basic story, so that I don't forget the facts and the names, I'll refer to this book in my hand. But like I mentioned, I'm reading the original translation, and things I've picked up from Guruji Swamiji over the years that are not in the books. Like the books, unfortunately, don't have the significance as much. The books stick to story. And I think I've mentioned it. It's always nicer when it's told. Anyone else? Any questions? Yeah. Gandharva. Why did he fight them? The Gandharva who gave them all that advice? No, he didn't say it was a test. He said I was proud. And then he thanks Arjuna for humbling him. So really nice guy. So he again, this is this wonderful thing in the Mahabharata that you see is this incredible honesty that people have, which I know people hide things. Like you see, this is why I spent that time on um, Dhritarashtra would hide what he was feeling. But a lot of the times in the Mahabharata, they're incredibly honest. Like I'm feeling lust. Would you please, accommodate my lust, or what gratify? Some nice word they use, but basically, like women say this to men say this to women, and they're incredibly honest about it. And then and if the guy or the girl says no, I'm not in the mood, then the other one's okay, mostly. But there was this incredible honesty, and I've heard Swamiji say this many a times. If I have a shortfall within me and I'm extremely honest about it, it's fine. Not everyone's perfect, and we don't expect everyone to be perfect. The problem of adharma comes when I try to hide my shortcomings. That's what we do, right? We hide our shortcomings. Whereas the beautiful thing, like one of the really most beautiful things I've learned in the Mahabharata, and you don't see it as much in the Ramayana, because in the Ramayana, they don't have shortfallings. They're also perfect. It's like very annoying for them to be so perfect. But in the Mahabharata, they're not perfect. And they're so honest about their shortcomings. Like when Yudhishthira does fail in the game of dice, and even Bhim and Draupadi are taunting him, he'll say, yes, I lost. It was the worst day of my life. And even Arjuna's shortcoming is that he's sometimes a little bit too obsessed with his fame and his vanity. It's very clear about it. And he knows when he's doing something for pride versus when he's doing something for good. And when there's a conflict of pride and good will win. Like now when he was fighting Karna, he could have rubbed it in Karna's face. Oh, really? You think I'm a good archer, do you? Like he could have really rubbed it in Karna's face, but he doesn't, because he's there to protect Drupada, and he's focused. So, but when an opportunity arises, then, he enjoys his fame and he enjoys his attention and and he's honest about it. He knows it's a shortcoming. And that's the thing, when we are aware that it's a shortcoming, when we're honest about our shortcoming, we don't really let us get it. It won't get to the point where we commit adharma because of it. But when we try to cover up our shortcomings, and we ourselves are not honest with ourselves about our shortcoming, or we're trying so hard for the other person not to see then adharma can creep in. So the Mahabharata, actually, the beautiful thing about the Mahabharata is it's telling you, you don't have to be perfect. Nobody in the Mahabharata except Krishna is perfect. Balram, Krishna's brother, is an alcoholic in the Mahabharata. Like, whoa. You can be Krishna's brother and have such a weakness. And it's well known. Yeah. So like no weaknesses are hidden in the Mahabharata. It's like own your weakness, own your shortcoming. Improve by all means. Don't use it like I've owned it and now that's done. But sometimes it's something that we're not able to quite but when I've owned it and when I'm not hiding it, other people also won't allow me to use it to do a dharma. Yeah. Like other people will say, yeah, we all know you're very short-tempered. You please don't talk. And then I've owned it, so I'll have to say, yeah, I am short-tempered. That's why I'm going to talk. So it becomes more manageable. Actually, you can live with someone who's owned their weakness. Because which one of us doesn't have, right? So when we try to cover it up or make excuses for it, then there's no hope of growth. Did I answer your question? Okay, great. The Gandharva said, I was proud. Thank you for humbling me. So he seemed to just be proud. A lot of very proud people in the Mahabharata, in life in general. Okay, we shall conclude. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkhabhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityarma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om